How to paint your way through art. That's our conversation today on the Neon Fish Podcast. Hello and welcome again to the Neon Fish Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Newsom. Thank you for joining us here, whether you're on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate you subscribing. We appreciate your comments. And we just enjoy having you being a part of this. Today I'm here on location in Greenville, South Carolina at the Great Homeschool Convention. And I have here with my guest, Courtney Sanford, who does Paint Your Way Through Art. And she's going to tell us a little bit about that. Thank you, Courtney, so much for agreeing to do this with me last minute.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I asked her to do this maybe about an hour and a half ago, and she graciously agreed. Courtney, tell me more about yourself and your background. We've had some conversations already the past couple of days, but there's some different stuff you haven't told me. So tell me about yourself and your background.
Well, I went to school to be a graphic designer. And I was a graphic designer for a performing arts center in Charlotte, and I got to do billboards and pocket calendars and all kinds of fun things. And then when I had children, I became a classical home educator because I didn't like what was happening in the schools, and I brought home. We found classical education just really clicked with my family, and I gave it all I had. And I learned with them as they grew up, and when they got to about 10th grade, I started teaching Western cultural history, and I learned so much from Francis Schaeffer, and read his books and fell in love with him, and his worldview studies. And so I was teaching this class for several years, and the students had to write papers about art. One day, my students said, "Why do we have to write papers about art? Why don't we do art?" And I said, "You're right, why don't we?" So I started playing around with that idea, and it was just kind of grew out of that.
Sort of the whole thing with music, art appreciation, might have to study about it, so like you can't just be a part of it, right?
Yeah, the more you learn about it, the more you want to try it.
Right. So I can, as a musician, I can think of some ways that maybe there's a way to do this with music too. It's a great concept. If you're having problems hearing, it's because we're in a big convention hall and there's a lot of ambient noise. I'm going to tug this microphone closer just a little bit, so maybe that'll help. I try not to do a lot of editing, so they get to hear all the things that's
great.
going on.
Yeah. It's a fun place, and we're happy to be out where the people are finally.
Okay, so your program is Paint Your Way Through Art History. Tell me about that.
So we this turned into an online class because of the shutdown, and I didn't think it was going to work, but it has been so much fun, and I've been able to reach people all over the country, and even Hawaii and Japan. So at 8:30 at night, I get online, and they're just waking up, and they have their paints at home, and they buy a book. If you can see me, I'm holding up a big art journal. So I was doing art journaling before, and it just seemed to make sense. When you do a lot of paintings, you end up with a lot of stuff on your walls. And so we're painting in a book, and the kids stick with me all year. And we start in September, and we go through May, and we do a different artist or period every week. And by the end of the year, they will have their own art history book. And so we start with cave painting at the very beginning. And we talk about what they were trying to communicate. Why did they paint on caves? And we go through the Renaissance, and we try to imitate what the Renaissance artists were doing. They love perfection. And we talk about worldview mainly in our history part. So I want the kids to see that during the time periods where people knew that they were created in the image of God, they created really beautiful things. And then as they turned their back on that, they began to see man as a broken figure, and they didn't know how to put the pieces together, and that shows up in their art. Like we did Picasso this week, and you can see in Picasso, it looks like man is all fragmented and broken. That's how he saw man. and he didn't know that God puts the pieces together. So we play around with Picasso's ideas, but we know that Jesus puts the pieces together in our whole.
Right. So you want the body of somebody's work. When it comes to art, music, anything like that, the whole body of a person's work generally reflects their worldview. And so when you begin to look at things like Picasso, you begin to see just how troubled his worldview was.
It's broken, yeah.
Right.
So we hit a point in the high Renaissance, when the most beautiful things were created, where they had this great balance between knowing that you're created in the image of God and knowing that man is great. But then that balance only lasted for a little while, and then they kind of forgot the image of God part, and they started thinking that man is great. And so that led us down a road to humanism, the belief that man is great in and of himself, and they put all their faith in that in man. And then they saw what man did, which was create the atomic bomb. And then I think the art community was especially troubled by that. They had put all their faith in science, and science led to the destruction of a whole city in an instant, and they were left with nothing. And so they rejected all of art history because they thought that that's what led to the destruction and the troubles of World War II. And they had nowhere else to go. So that's why Jackson Pollock rose to fame with his splatter painting. He was rejecting form and shading and beauty because he put his faith in the wrong place.
Do you find that art tends to tends to be downstream of culture, or is it upstream of culture? Are the artists sort of helping to redefine what the next movement is in culture?
Oh, you see a lot of back and forth. So like Claude Monet started doing something a little bit different, and he started listening to the scientists. So the scientists were discovering how color works and how your eye works and all these optics. And so he used what the scientists were discovering in his art. But once he did that, that spurred a bunch of others to try new things. So he was kind of like this portal to a whole new world. And so after he started Impressionism, then you had Pointillism and you had Van Gogh to start Expressionism. And so you can see how one idea just blossoms into a whole bunch of new ideas. So it's a back and forth between culture and
I'll definitely see there's been some research into how much of postmodernism developed out of the art world first before it actually entered into philosophy.
Yeah, because in postmodernism, you're trying to shock your audience, or trying to come up with something new. I'd say the worldview of modernism would be, they don't care whether it's beautiful, they just care whether it's new. So everything old is bad and everything new is good, whether it's beautiful or not. And so that pushes artists to try to come up with something new. So they were pushing the envelope. And it doesn't matter whether it's in a good way or a bad way, as long as it's new.
Where are we now?
Now I think
2021, where are we now?
I think what museums are looking for is social justice art. So that's where we are now, and I don't really encourage my students to go to an art school. I don't know that they want to go down the social justice route in art, but there is a thriving culture of impressionist painters, and all these other movements, they didn't necessarily go away. It's just that the museums right now are looking for a shock, and but I don't think that as a Christian artist, I don't listen to them. That's not who I paint for. I paint for an audience of one, Jesus, and that's what I tell my students. That audience, not the museum.
So a young Christian who wants to engage in art, maybe choose a career path, an artistic career path, graphic design, animation, any of these things. What kind of advice would you give entering the profession of art as a Christian?
Well, I got a degree in graphic design, and already I was not popular with my professors because I have a positive worldview. And they really poured their energy into the gals who had all the goth makeup and the dark worldview. They were doing content that was disturbing. That's what they encouraged. So I don't know that you would want to be in that kind of environment. So I would say check out the school you're looking at. But I don't know that you necessarily need a 4-year degree if you want to go into graphic design. When I was there, they had not even invented computers yet. So I was using...
Well, you should have said that.
I know, I just kind of dated myself. I'm young at heart. And computers have been developed, but I was using X-Acto knives and pens in college. And so now I think if you are computer savvy, you can teach yourself, or you could do it through separate courses. I do think, like, I send my kids to college because one, they're, but we go to Christian college. But I think you could study liberal arts and teach yourself the skills you need to know without having to be under an art school that might be pushing you in that social justice direction. It might not be what you are focused on.
In music and writing, there are, and movies, increasingly film, there is a budding Christian sort of sub-industry. So you've got Christian publishers, you've got Christian recording companies, Christian movie studios. A Christian who wants to really focus on being a part of those disciplines with a Christian perspective generally find themselves in one of these areas. They might not stay in one of those areas, and there's a lot of controversy about whether or not Christians should be working in the secular market or working in the Christian market. But there's a definite Christian market which they participate in. Art really doesn't have that.
There are a few.
There are a few.
Let's see. There's an artist named Fujimura who is he's an Asian American, and on his website you can find out he's got a community of Christian artists, and he paints very. His stuff is very abstract, but it's very spiritual. It kind of needs the video to go along with each painting to understand what it is he's doing. But they'll be titled Biblical Themes, and he supports other Christian artists. There's also a good community of impressionist painters that's real active, and they have impressionist shows. So there's a lot of, I think after you get your skills down and join a professional community, you can get into other Christian artists. Because what people really want to look at on their walls is not the stuff that you want to see in a museum. So I think that, and as a freelance designer, I pick my clients. So my clients tend to be Christian homeschooling organizations, and I do a lot of book design for them.
Is there a difference between, if you were to set secular artists' work beside a Christian artist's work, is there a difference? Because you can hear a difference in Christian music and secular music. You can see a difference. I mean, it's a big controversy again. A lot of people wonder why in the world there's such a huge gap between Christian film and secular film. And even Christian writing, there's a difference. There's a worldview difference. Can you see a difference?
I would say art that makes you think that there is hope. So in a lot of work, like Monet was not a Christian, but he's definitely captured the beauty of light. So whenever you're painting God's creation, it's uplifting. Now someone like Picasso, who focuses kind of on the darker side, you're not left with a feeling of hope. And even his work, like Guernica is an anti-war mural, which was the perfect place to use his cubist, abstract, expressionist style. It came together to say war is terrible. And I don't want to hang in the living room, but it's its message, even though it's not Christian. I agree with him. War is a terrible thing, and we need to remember that harms children and others, and that's what that painting says. So it depends on the message, and I think whenever you have a medium and a message that come together and say what you wanted to say, and it's uplifting, then you've got a good piece. So, I don't reject non-Christian artists for sure. I think if anything, it makes me feel more compassion to reach out to them. Like, I just say, bless Picasso's work. I would love to have been able to talk to him about how he could put his own pieces together.
Right, because you can see their heart, their pain, and their worldview just comes out of their heart. And it's just out there for you to see, and you see that they're missing something.
Yeah, and a lot of the artists were Christian, but it's been downplayed in history. Like Van Gogh was a very spiritual man. He had issues, and he felt rejected by the church. He wanted to be a pastor, and they said, no, you're not a good speaker. And then he tried being a missionary, and he gave all his stuff away. And so they said no to that too. And then as an artist, he had no place in the church. Now, musicians have a good place in the church, but it's hard for visual artists and Protestant churches to have a place. If you think about your church, it's probably not full of girls. The Catholic churches and Orthodox churches have a lot of icons, but then there's that issue of, are you worshiping its image? Is it a graven image? So there's that fine line, and I would love for artists to have a role in the church. That was Van Gogh's problem. He was an artist, and there was no place for him in the church.
Increasingly, churches are needing graphic design.
That's true.
And they need a traditional artist.
Yeah, and you can do the graphics behind the music.
Yeah, and even photography, I know that's not exactly the same thing. As photographers would have an easier time.
So I think about that a lot, and I sometimes will be inspired to paint a painting after hearing my pastor speak on it. So I'm working on a great big picture of Israel as she's described in Revelation. So she's an expectant mother, she's cloaked in the sun, and so I'm using gold foil and a woman, and she's standing on a moon, I think. So I'm taking biblical ideas and working with them, and not completely abstract.
My wife is dabbled in. She's got a Bible that is designed to be an art journal Bible.
Yeah, I love those.
Yeah, so she's dabbled with that some. Just sort of color pencils, drawing images around scripture.
Yeah, and a lot of students will think if I'm a Christian artist, I need to be drawing pictures of the cross, or baby Jesus with a big head, that talking about the Sunday school art. You don't have to do that. I think you can be even an abstract painter or a landscape painter, and it doesn't have to be in your face that you're a Christian. But anything that's uplifting or glorifying the Lord is fabulous, and we don't want to make graven images, so we got to keep that in mind. But I start every class with a scripture. Even in Picasso, we talked about the scripture about being a broken vessel, and how his work looks like in broken vessels. And I tell my kids, we all go through times where we might feel broken, and we might feel like a broken vessel, but unlike Picasso, we know that the Lord's going to guide us, and He's going to put us back together.
All right, so Courtney, painting your way through history, just in a nutshell, one sentence, what is this about?
Online, we're going to learn about the rise and decline of Western cultural history by painting a painting every week for a school year. Then kids can turn their high school fine arts credit, or you can make it into a Western cultural history credit if you want to read some Francis Schaeffer with it.
And you're teaching art technique at the same time, as well as you're doing history and Western civilization.
Yeah, so it's kind of unique that I merged Western cultural history with fine arts, and I'm actually giving the students a chance to get their hands dirty and try.
This is a homeschooling convention. Is this just for homeschooling?
No, definitely not. I have classes in the evening, so you could go to school all day and still take my class as an extracurricular, just like you would dance. If you want to join, I'd be happy to have you. So far, it's just been homeschoolers, because they're used to paying for classes.
And if you want to find out more information about how much this costs, we're going to make sure the website and everything is in the description below. But without putting numbers on the podcast, you can go look it up for yourself. My wife and I crunched the numbers. This versus my daughter's ballet lessons.
Oh yeah,
and this is cheaper than her ballet lessons. So if you've got kids who are doing private lessons of any sort, this fits right into. This is a comparable art lesson, where they're going to learn much more than just art.
Yeah, and we have great discussions, and we really are relational. I didn't know that we would be, but the students are getting to know kids from all over the world and building relationships and sharing their art. And they have a private forum where they upload their art and they give each other feedback. And we're really developing an online Christian artist community. So it's been great.
All right, well, I don't want to keep you much longer. You've had some people kind of drifting by behind the camera, watching to see what we were doing. Hopefully they want to talk to you more about this. So those who are watching on YouTube, listening on the podcast, if they want to find out more information about this, about you and what you're doing for
www.courtneysanford.net.
.net. All right, so all the information will be in the description below. Thank you, Courtney, so much for doing this and taking time out of this convention and this busy convention hall. Hopefully you've been able to hear us clearly. I'll try to tweak some of that and post-editing to make it a little more audible. And thank you so much. Thank you for watching on YouTube. Thank you for listening on your favorite podcast app. We'll see you next time on the Neon Fish Podcast.